You have no idea what an honor it is to welcome a pioneer whose work has fundamentally reshaped how we understand addiction, metabolism, and the brain's reward system.
I'm an addiction nerd. I love addiction medicine. I'm a recovering alcoholic since 1985, and I did my treatment in California. Those weeks there are the best weeks that turned my life around. And at that moment, I decided to not go back to traditional nursing, but just pursue anything with addiction. This picture represents addiction for me. When you are hooked in an addiction, you are enslaved with your drug and you are disconnected from life. That's what it is. Everything is revolving around the drug. When to eat the drug, how to eat the drug, how to recuperate, how to stop, how to start again. The drug takes over and it hijacks your brain and your body. And that's what I want to talk about today. Come from the old school when we only had a psychosocial approach. Everything was psychosomatic, unless you could take a blood sample and see that it wasn't. But the thought was that any pain and trauma you have experienced will create some kind of pain in the body. So if you had gastritis, it was because you were stressed over something in your life, something you hadn't dealt with. And I came into knowing the new school, and it immediately attracted me to hear that it was a biopsychosocial and spiritual way to think. I like the word somatopsychic. If you're biochemically unbalanced, the symptoms could be sadness, aggressiveness, depression, and you have false feelings and thoughts. And that's what I want to get to. Because today, so many go in therapy and mess around with false feelings. And when you do that, you entrench them. You become your feelings, you become your misery, and you don't see a way out. And also the notion that there must be something wrong with your feelings, that's why you eat. Well, I'm going to tell you a big revelation. It is your feelings are a cause from the drug. It is the sugar and the carbs and the faulty wiring in your brain that create negative feelings. And then you eat on them, and then there's more negative thoughts and feelings, and then you eat on that, and it is a horrible merry-go-round. So that's what I like to help clients to break. It's very difficult to live in an era where some are still in the 18th century, some are here and now, and some are 100 years ahead. Story about the big elephant and 3 blind men, and one is touching the trunk and saying, "Oh, this is a fire hose." And another one is touching the leg and said, no, this is a tree. And the third is touching the body and saying, this is a wall. So of course, what you see in here is very much depending on where you come from, what you have learned, and what you know. This is very interesting to read, you guys. And this is what I use as my definition of the disease concept when I work with addicts. No matter which outlet it is, if it is alcohol or gambling, it's not about the drug, it's about the brain. It's not the substance the person uses that makes them an addict. It's not even the quantity or frequency of use. So somebody could drink a little and not very often and be addicted. Somebody else could drink a lot very often and not have the illness of addiction. It's the same with sugar and carbs. If you start viewing this as really an illness, you understand that it's very important to diagnose. It's very important to assess. How would you else know what you have in front of you? There is actually a primary illness. There is no cause. Quit looking for the cause, because you're going to end up wasting years trying to find something that's not there. It is a primary illness, period. People are responsible for their own recovery. There is no other way. I used to say that I can walk with you. I can give you a map. I can give you a compass. But, I can't walk for you. You have to do the walking. In the field of eating, I hear all these names of maladaptive eating. It's a huge confusion. This is what I hear clients getting the diagnosis in the traditional system or among nutritional experts or people that think they understand food addiction and so forth. But, addiction is addiction and nothing else. So you have to understand the differences. Today, when we talk about ultra-processed food addiction, It's my answer to that one. You have to understand what is a psychoactive substance and what does it do in your brain. It causes changes in mood awareness, thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Process addictions. It made the same physical changes in the brain as psychoactive substances do. So they are addictions. And if you know a gambling addict that have lost all their money and are suicidal, you understand how painful and incredible that is. And as you're going to see, it leads to other outlets in time. And it is very potent. And the only thing you could say about UPF is you become faster addicted to them. And I used to ask people, how many more science articles do you need to read that physical activity is good for you, or eating good food is good for you, or good sleep is good for you? Do you need to read many more on that, or do you know that? And they said, well, I know that. So we know a lot. That is not really the problem, you guys. It is what we do. I used to say to my students that, yeah, I could sell new detox and new food plans all day long, but that's not going to help anyone with an addiction. I need to sell recovery. And that's the hard part. And that's what they said to me when I was in treatment. Oh, Bitten, this is easy. All you have to do is change everything. So this is what we need to work with. We need to create multidisciplinary teams, and we need to connect the dots, all the time, connect the dots. It takes at least 17 to 23 years, was the last number I heard, for new research to be implemented into traditional medicine. That's a long time. So addiction is a very nasty illness, absolutely. Most people think it is about dopamine in the reward system, and I wish it was that simple. But I used to say, you are stuck in the middle of these four horrible forces. And of course, dopamine is very important, but it's the conductor. And also the neurotransmitters works in pairs all the time. So if one is going up, one is going down. One is going down, another one goes up. So you have to understand much more about neurotransmitters than only dopamine. But that is what's creating the incredible power of this illness. Because once that's happened, once the reward system had felt the high from sugar, it's going to want to have it for the rest of their life. So anytime I'm stressed or something happened, there is a part in my brain, I call it the red dog of the illness. It says, how about some chocolate? It's so stupid. It's the only tool it has. And I said, I have lots of tools to stop that today, but one of the tools I use it. Oh, really? You think that's a good idea? You know what? I don't have time for that today. Come back another day. So usually red dog calms down and I can do what I need to do. But the next thing that happens that is so incredible, dangerous, and powerful is that once this reward system starts to be unbalanced, the neurotransmitters, and they are several, the reptilian brain is going to wake up. And, I used to say, you can't train an alligator to go heel. This is the most problematic part of the brain to deal with because it's already wired when you're born. It doesn't learn from experience. It doesn't have a language, and it's totally made for survival. What are the functions in the reptilian brain? Well, fight, flight, freeze, food, and sex. Those are primal, survival instincts. They're not really something you could deal with logically. So the horrible thing with this illness is that it's getting so overactivated. This is what I'm going to say, eat or you die. And here's where the stress comes in. Because the survival system will kick in and you're going to feel freeze, fight, flight, and the need for food. Or this is also something you need to understand if you work with sex addiction, that it's incredibly powerful. So one of the things that I do a lot when I work with clients is that I develop lots of tools for that client to calm the reptilian brain down. Actually, one of the most important things to do, because if you calm this thing down, the other one's going to benefit from that. But what's happened in the next step here now we have a unbalanced reward system, unbalanced reptilian brain, and of course, the sugar and carb load will start overactivating the pancreas. And here's where the metabolic system comes in. That's so important to understand when you work with sugar and carb addiction. So you're going to have an overactive, overproducing pancreas. And of course, that's going to create, a lack of energy in the cells because, when you have too much insulin, you become insulin resistant. So now you have three parts driving the craving. Then you have the second brain, which is your microbiome, stomach, the intestinal flora. The stomach is communicating with your brain all the time, sending out signals. And you can become very depressed and have a lot of anxiety due to an unbalanced intestinal flora. But if these all four are overactive, you are stuck with monsters. You're like in a cave where they're going to eat you alive. So you have to understand all these parts and how they affect each other all the time and how you start cleaning it up, stopping it, rebalancing reward system neurotransmitters, calming the reptilian brain down, working with metabolic health, solving the insulin resistance, restoring energy, restoring the mitochondria, healing the gut flora, and so on. And also you have to understand that the mess the drug creates in the brain, our clients, we think that maybe they lie to us about how they eat and when they eat and, about the symptoms for this. And they don't understand how they got overweight or no, I have no idea. Maybe it's genes. They're not purposely lying to you. It is denial caused biochemically unbalanced brain. So I used to tell my students that if you have a client in front of you that has the diagnosed schizophrenia and they tell you, well, I know there's aliens up in the lamps and they are giving me messages now, you don't get angry at that person because it's a symptom of the illness. And when our clients deny or don't connect the dots or don't understand the severity of their illness and the situation they're in, we call biochemical denial. So this is what I've seen through all these years. Usually it starts early on. Parents have said to me that, well, he or she only liked white food or only wanted sugary foods. And we live in a dieting world. We're totally obsessed with diets. So teenagers start dieting. That's like pouring gasoline on the fire with this illness, because that's when it's going to start exploding. It's going to ruin the metabolic system, ruin the reward system, overactivate the reptilian brain. It's going to kick all these things. And some clients start starving because they have loss of control over certain foods, the sugar and the carbs. So when they eat them, they have to restrict. And for some, that becomes an addiction. But most of the times, somebody that is restricting doesn't have the strength or the physical ability to do that for long, so they start binging. So most of my clients, they don't have the strength or they become so sick from binging and purging. Some stay there, but many dip over into volume eating and become very overweight and have extreme loss of control, and they cannot stop eating. They have insane cravings. To help them get the food noise down so you could teach them the behavior and what to eat, what is that going to cause if you look at it closely? Drug-seeking behavior. You need to get to another drug which has more effect, higher effect, and, that's how you start using nicotine or cannabis or whatever you come in touch with, cocaine, and so on. And another thing, we know from alcoholism that we have something called reverse tolerance, i.e., you can tolerate less and less the longer you go into the illness and the older you get, because every system gets older, your reward system ages and so forth. And then there's very little can trigger it. And we call that reverse tolerance. Remember that it is a progressive illness. But it takes at least 7 to 10 years to stabilize sugar addiction, to rewire and heal the brain and restore plasticity. That we know for stability. And so many of the clients have come to me and said, now you're going to tell me to exercise, right? Do I have to go to the gym? Because that's what they've been beat over the head with. Eat less, move more. And that's why I don't call it exercise. See, I call it physical activity. I use supplements, not a lot. These clients think that a pill is going to fix them. So if one pill is good, they want 14. So don't. 3 or 4 supplements at a time for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then we switch. There are different types of craving that you have to understand, and different tools for different types of cravings. Solution-focused therapy and not get stuck in feelings. I think there is way too much talk about feelings. That's going to cause entrenchment. It's more important to get people to do different than sit and talk about feelings. And then another huge package that I teach is relapse prevention. And very important is to talk about what I call TFUA. Feelings are not something all by itself. It is caused by negative thoughts or automatic negative thoughts many times, but the thoughts creates feelings, and that creates urges, impulsive behavior, and that creates action. So if you look at an addict, why they do what they do, you have to start asking them, how did you think? What are you thinking? And see the connection between how they think, causing how they feel, causing the impulsive behavior, causing the action. Lifelong management strategy is extremely important to prevent relapse. Or if relapse would occur, how do you treat it? How do you get them back on track? Because a lot of people feel so much shame when they relapse, they don't come back to you. You have to teach them that relapse can be part of the treatment process, and they should not feel bad about that. But they need to understand, why did they relapse? How did it happen? Understanding all the details in that, so that we can go forward and prevent the next one. Because it's a progressive illness. And I really see this. I've seen people being in recovery for many years, and they take one bite and they are worse than ever. And each relapse becomes worse until they no longer stand up for themselves. They disappear out in the fog and die probably. We talk a lot about illness, symptoms of illness, but what is a healthy lifestyle? What is included in health? Recovery is like going up in a downward going escalator. You must walk or you slip backwards. Abstinence is the prerequisition to do recovery work. That is the biochemical repair. That is healing the body and the brain first. That's abstinence, and looking at those parts to heal, to make the brain having its plasticity back, to create new neurons, new connections, heal the neurotransmitter balance, calm down reptilian brain, make the pancreas function properly, and heal the bacterial flora. That is biochemical repair. So I love this saying, sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. When they're leaving the training, I said, what did the most impact on you through this training? And they said, well, the most important thing I learned is that I have one problem only, but I have many consequences from that. So it's easier to handle when you know you have one problem. So you need to address addiction and talk about it naturally. Otherwise, if they don't surrender, if they have an addiction and don't accept it or surrender to it, you cannot help them. They're just going to keep doing a new diet, new method, new pill, and so on. So please dare talk addiction.